Hello, how are things today? I'm a little bit embarrassed that I haven't stumbled across Caligula's horse until 2024. I've always been aware of them, but I've never sat down and actually listened to them. Well, I have listened to Charcoal Grace, and wow, what an album. Here are my thoughts.
Sweating sickness is the legacy. You left it all to me. So go on, raise your hands and drink from the grail. Seeking to drive that last coffin nail in the ways that we.
Hi, this is Brent from the Similitude of Prague, back to you with another album review. This band is new to me, although they're not a new band. That, of course, is Caligula's Horse. And of course, the album is Charcoal Grace. And it is the first album I've ever heard from start to end from this band. That, of course, is Caligula's Horse. And of course, the album is Charcoal Grace. The band is from Brisbane, Australia, and it is the first album I've ever heard from start to end from this band. As for inspiration, I definitely hear a lot of Opeth in this music, as well as some Riverside, and as well Dream Theater. And I also hear a little bit of Steven Wilson in the arrangements of the song as well. The album is kind of what the world is going through with a pandemic and a lockdown and the after effects of said pandemic. So, what is the music like to me? How do I interpret this? How do I feel about it? What kind of emotions does it bring up in my heart and soul? It's quite a complex album and very rewarding after a few listens as well. Now, this is music that you could sit down and listen to and decide that the next time you listen to it, you're only going to focus on one thing, perhaps the drums, perhaps the bass, perhaps the vocals. What I'm trying to say is that it's complex and it's rewarding in that as you listen to the album, I just best describe it as saying it's an experience and a different set of senses and emotions. And these senses and emotions are triggered each time that you don't know if they're going to be triggered the next time you listen to it. And oddly enough, this album, right from the first listen, was an album I really enjoyed and really liked. However, saying that, any subsequent listens to afterwards, I've always felt small in measure, but different to my ears. Simply put, this is an album that you simply just can't and won't get tired of. And I've noticed that every time I listen to it, there's something else that comes up to the surface that I haven't either discovered or I've only discovered, from listens from early on. The album opens with a song called The World Breathes With Me, which, of course, being Prog, it's 10 minutes long, has a lovely piano opening, and then you get into what I'm going to call pure progressive metal. And I would have to say this song is kind of the first time I really could pick up on their um, influences, right from, like I said earlier, Opeth, Dream Theater. Hell, there's probably stuff going back to the 70s, Steely Dan. There's a lot of different things, a lot of things happening in this song alone. And the playing is nothing short of fantastic. I find too that the vocalist, I think Jim is his name. I should have looked that up, but I apologize. His voice in this song and a lot of the stuff on this album sounds to me almost more like an additional instrument. And then after that, we have track two, which is Gollum, which is one of the short tracks on the album and was also released as the first single slash video from Inside Out Music. This song, to my ears, is very complex. And I'd have to say some very melodic guitar solos, which just adds to the impact of the emotional side of this song and this album and style of progressive prog metal. And then, of course, we have the centerpiece of the album, the Charcoal Grace. I'm going to call it a suite. I don't know if they referred to it as one full song or if it's four individual ones, but I'm going to call it a suite because I think they're all, to me, they're four different separate tracks, but at the same time, they all kind of fit in like a puzzle and have their place. And which, of course, is an epic length of about, I think, just over 24 minutes. And at first, I really didn't know what to think about this suite, but I've come to realize, and it kind of comes to my conclusion that this will probably be the most rewarding song in the future, a couple of years from now. I think people will look back on this album for that song or that suite or however it is detailed as. And I've even wondered how they might even pull it off in a live setting. This song demands your attention. It's demanding in the sense that you need to listen and you need to be on the journey that the story tells, both lyrically and musically. Okay, now that describes the first half of the album. Now we have the second side, which contains Sails, The Storm Chaser, and Mute. And Sails to me is a much needed kind of break from the emotional or heavier side of the first half. This is kind of a nice bridging point before you get to the Storm Chasers and finally Mute. And it is such a gorgeous song. I think just listening to it even on its own just brings so much emotion right to you and a lot of just appreciation for things. It's a great song, and I think you all should go and listen to that song, whether you're a fan of this type of music or not, because it is that good. And the next song would be The Storm Chaser, which was the second single released, and it's a good song. I'm not going to say the best on the album, but it's definitely one of the highlights. It's got one of the most catchy choruses on the album. Check out the video. It's a little bit different, but it fits the vibe of the music very well. Then we come to the last song, Mute. Now, if I had to kind of hone in, kind of pick a song from this album, it would be definitely Mute. It totally made my jaw drop in all its absolute brilliance. It starts with this haunting solo vocal. It goes through a lot of parts, and a lot of them are just sublime beauty. You can really be drawn in emotionally. I've said emotional a lot in this review, but it's definitely an emotional album. And it's got everything in it that you want out of a prog epic, classic prog epic too. It's even got a nice little flute solo in it, which was kind of a surprise. I didn't think I'd hear something like that on this style of music, but nonetheless, it was pretty breathtaking. However, though, this is not the absolute most accessible track. I would tell somebody to go maybe check out The Storm Chaser or Gollum before I would tell them to go check this out. And it was to me that kind of a track that ticked, all the boxes that I like and expect to hear from a progressive metal album. And everything's been checked off. They didn't leave anything on the table. It's all in there. And it's a great way to close the album, too. And I'm not surprised, but the whole album works collectively. And I have really, really enjoyed it. I didn't think I would enjoy it this much, but once again, a band has proven me wrong, and I'm glad it's a band that's new to me. And I know this may be premature, but I can certainly see at this moment this album heading towards my list of top albums at the end of the year. This album is absolutely well deserving of your ears and your time. I suggest you go out and buy a physical copy of it. I mean, the artwork on the album is stunning in itself, and I could see that even being a point where people would buy it just because of the artwork. And as a rating, I'm proud to give this album a masterpiece rating. It's the first of 2024, and I've got to do myself a favor, go back in their discography, check their stuff out, and wait for the future for more from these guys. Maybe even one day get to see them, who knows. But anyways, guys, take care as always, and we'll see each other in the next review. Goodbye.